Fresh off his huge Supreme Court win, Donald Trump sets his sights on passing the big, beautiful bill before July 4th. Meanwhile, should illegal alien farmhands be granted amnesty or a stay at Alligator Alcatraz? Blaze News, the mandate starts right now. Welcome in, everyone. I'm Jill Savage, joined by our esteemed panel editor-in-chief, Matthew Peterson, and our DC politics editor, Chris Bedford. So, Bedford, we're going to talk about the big, beautiful bill, right? But I have to ask you, what took longer, Chris? Was it the reading of the big, beautiful bill on the Senate floor, or was it your trip from the time that you left this studio to get back home to Washington, D.C.? What took longer?
It actually took me longer to get home than it took them to build, to read that. The clerks, they were updating on Twitter every half an hour as they got further and further through this bill that Republicans tried to say, we waive, you don't have to do anything. And the Democrats said, you must read every word. So these guys, as people told me, and they went to the Capitol at the beginning of the weekend, I have coffee and I have alcohol, and I don't know which I'll rely on more. But I think those guys were definitely on the coffee side. But my trip, well, that was fun. Wow. I got on a direct flight, left right from the studio, from Dallas to Reagan Airport in Washington, D.C., and the plane left. It was supposed to be a 3-hour flight. It was 3.5 hours. We got a little delay on the way out. I land, I'm looking out the window. You know, a lot of airports are pretty distinguishable. Like, you know if you land in Boston, you know if you land in DFW, you know if you land at Dulles Airport. I'm looking out, and I tell my wife, hey, I got home safe. I'll be home in about 45 minutes or so, and I get my car. And she says, thank goodness, because one of the planes that left from Dallas-Fort Worth landed in Raleigh. I'm like, oh, nope, that's not me. And then I decided to check Google Maps, and that was indeed me. And to hear from Sarah, I was like, this is the worst thing that ever happened to her. And I was thinking, well, they say we're going to leave in 45 minutes. You just have to refuel. If anyone wants to get off the plane now, they can. And some people, the smart people, booked it off that plane. Mm-hmm. I said, well, I'm neither in Dallas nor in D.C., the two places I ought to be, so I guess I'll stay on this plane. About an hour and a half later, they said, never mind. Oh, and by the way, it's shut down in all the airports in D.C. for lightning storms. I'd seen the lightning storm out my window, by the way. It was really beautiful. And it's shut down all the way up to Philadelphia. So we're just going to stay here tonight. And all the hotels are basically booked because everyone else is stranded in Raleigh, too. This was a safe place to come. So I traveled to a hotel, find a bar for a last call from someone who used to work in the airline industry, the bartender. And the next morning, I'm back at the airport for a 10 a.m. flight. Mechanical issues delayed us to 12:30, one by half an hour, by half an hour, by half an hour. We get on this plane. We're sitting on this plane, and the American Airlines national system crashes. God did not want me in the air.
He was not letting you go.
He said, absolutely not. So the pilot said, you know, it was funny. He said, I'm going to give up on predictions. You guys know I stink at this. These predictions have been wrong on every one so far. It could be 5 minutes. It could be 5 hours. We're all sweating. We're sitting in a heat wave. Everyone just go to the bar, and I'll call you when we're ready to go. And I went to the bar and booked a rental car. And I got in that car and said, see ya. And I watched my phone pinged as the hours went by, and I got closer to Washington with update after update, more and more delays. And I was more than halfway home at 5:30 the next day after I left when the flight was canceled. So I was so happy to be traveling solo because I saw people with infants and toddlers, both, and wives who, I love women. I love your women, but you're not great travel partners for logistics and stress. It just kind of adds to it, generally speaking. So it was just me in a bar tab and a rental car. And it was a nice drive getting north. And I was happy to get home at about 8 p.m. the day after I got in that direct flight out of Dallas.
That is an epic story, a tale of woe and lamentation. I'm glad it wasn't me. Sometimes
I was in trouble, Matt.
Oh, yeah.
Sarah was like, yeah. I've been handling this baby alone for 3 days. So It wasn't a restful weekend. It was 5 a.m. wake-ups all weekend, too.
No.
But I understood. She had been, and she was a trooper.
You were forced to use a lot of chips that, should be saved for other occasions. And they were just wasted
I'm going to
by
have to call
Mother
American
Nature.
Airlines. Can I get some credit at home, please?
Yeah. They can't give you that. They can't give us that. Well, we should listen to what President Trump said on Fox in the Sunday morning, discussing the big, beautiful bill now.
Mr. President, I think I know your priorities in the big, beautiful bill. I mean, obviously, you want to get the tax cuts extended, and you've got other tax cuts.
Any other things, though, takes care of the border. There's also no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime.
But I've spoken to a few senators, and they've gotten together, like Rick Scott and Ron Johnson and Mike Lee. And, Rick Scott's worried about the overall cost, and Mike Lee is worried about the Inflation Reduction Act.
So, Chris, what are some of the big obstacles that we are facing right now in this big, beautiful bill?
Well, the Senate's finally voting. They're doing their vote-a-rama. They should be wrapping up this evening. It was stupid that they're still doing the vote-a-rama. Thune let them all go home because they were tired on Sunday. But the vote-a-rama, which is when anyone gets to offer any amendment they want for an up or down vote. It's by the way, it's kind of like going to camp at first. It's really being a legislator. People have bread. They order pizza. They order Chinese food. In the cloakroom, there are usually a couple places you can grab beer if you're a senator, or people have back in their offices. But it goes on and on and on and on until everybody says uncle and just gives up. So that's the reason to start it when everyone's really tired on Sunday night. You want them to just hate it and not enjoy the first 12 hours of it. And that's why you quit and go home. But they took a break, started this morning, and they're still going with amendments. And this gives Republican senators and Democratic senators a chance to say, you know what, I'm so ticked this wasn't included. I am adding this amendment. And then they get to watch their friends and colleagues say, no, you're not. That's why it's not in the original bill. And it's just kind of it's a fun exercise, but a long one. This bill, big, beautiful bill, is cruising to get out of the U.S. Senate. Then when it goes to the House of Representatives, you're going to have some issues with the different tweaks that the Senate made. Per usual, the Senate made it worse in numerous areas. You're going to have problems with the moderates and the liberal Republicans who are worried about the Medicaid. They've secured the changes to the way states have been able to dodge their traditional 50-50 cost split with the federal government through provider taxes. This is something that's important to basically the representatives of 49 American states. If you don't live in Alaska, it's important to you because your state now needs to find out other places that they'll need to make cuts in order to be able to uphold their part of the bargain. And the people that will probably be impacted the worst are the rural hospitals that, while they don't get the lion's share of the money, have such smaller profit margins because they are smaller. Their clientele, their patients are usually not as wealthy. They're not destination hospitals for people coming in from all over the world to try and get their procedures done. And their population is usually older. They have smaller beds too. So all of that combines for that can be a danger. But the Senate put in a $15 billion backup fund to help stabilize rural hospitals, which have been closing at a dangerous and remarkable rate since Obamacare was passed. This helps stabilize them. That fund will, of course, grow over the years, as everything in Washington does. But it is actually an important aspect for the populace and the people who represent more rural states and poorer states to have that sort of backup in there. That's a fight. But I mean, I think that this goes. I think that they get it done. There's a lot of people who are angry, who want to vote against it. The bill is a Frankenstein in some ways, but it's also got key provisions of what the president wants, whether it's the tax policy, which is essential to not grinding this economy to a halt. And getting that done before Christmas is so important for small businesses and other people who really need to make their decisions on next year's outlays based on what taxes are going to be paying. They need to know that now. The sooner the better. It's got the money for the deportations, which is essential first step in helping to remake this country and bring it back. The money for border patrol and border security, the beds that are necessary. Huge aspects of the president's agenda are supported by this. So Republicans don't have a ton of options. The liberals are kind of ticked. The conservatives are kind of ticked. The defense hawks are everyone's kind of ticked, and they're going to have to hold their nose and vote yes.
Well, let's go to the topic of your Beltway brief. Democrats and Republicans both facing reckonings. And let me just preface this by saying it's a really interesting time in the life of the administration to be alive, because everything's getting very real now. So, I mean, I don't even know how many bullet points we could pull out from recent events. But we got Thom Tillis, our not so friend Thom Tillis, announcing he's not going to seek re-election, and that's just fine by many of us. But you have Newsom, we've talked about before, sort of signaling he's going to try to change, and then getting pummeled by the progressives. And there is going to be a lot more of these fights, as we saw recently with Iran and Israel, and intervention versus non-intervention on the right. So there's kind of a ferment out there, and it's starting. The cauldron's starting to boil, right? More and more, and I see more and more of this. And this is actually where it gets really interesting, because this is actually where the rubber meets the road, and some new things might be birthed out of this that could actually help us. But tell us about your Beltway brief and your thoughts.
Sure, thank you. Absolutely. At the beginning of the year, the sides were lined up against each other. Democrats let's start with the Democrats. The far left, AOC and Bernie Sanders and their tour, and those Democrats from Chuck Schumer to Gavin Newsom, surprising figures for this, who said, hold on, let's pump the brakes on some of these policies. We seem to be picking a lot of 90-10 issues that the American people are against as mainstays of our domestic policy. And that could have dangerous impacts for voters. We're not trying to drive this party off the cliff waving the progressive banners. We're trying to win. And then you can do different things. Let's take a card out of Barack Obama's book, who talked like Ronald Reagan, but governed to the left of Jimmy Carter. And those people were shutted down and beaten up pretty quickly. And you saw when Newsom went against men competing in women's sports, every comment against him from prominent Democrats had a name attached to it. But those people who came out and said, listen, this is just common sense. The American people don't want this. It doesn't make sense, and Democrats can't die on this hill. Those people never even would put their names on their defense of Gavin Newsom, who was considered the front runner, essentially, to be the Democratic nominee for president next round. Just because they were afraid of that same hit squad coming for them, that same mob coming for them. So they were worried, and Gavin Newsom ended up having to take a step back and start repeating those left-wing orthodoxies once again. But the mayoral race in New York has really helped clinch the deal, where you're realizing that these Chuck Schumers, these Nancy Pelosi's, these liberals and these leftists, and they're actually significantly more sane than Gen Zers who are coming up behind them. The activist class that's out there chanting like Glastonbury, death to the IDF, or out there chanting of free Palestine and river to the sea and all this and all that. And by and large, it seems like the loudest, most vicious, and potentially the future of the Democratic Party. So that civil war that has been much more public than anything going on with the Republicans, much more loud and vicious, is coming to an end. And it's essentially left-wing mop-up action. They are in charge of the party, and they will be at least through another presidential election, and see if they get another reckoning. And you might see the Democratic establishment strike back. You might see the Clintons and other people get behind Eric Adams and actually help him win the mayoral race for New York. But even that would be like a battle of the bulge. The war is over. This is a last gasp. The left is in charge of the Democratic Party. And on the Republican side, there was a fight between the Hawks and the Doves. Now, I don't think that the Hawks won quite as much as they said they would. Everyone's fighting for what MAGA foreign policy means in a party that's really still, a movement that's really still decided by one man, Donald Trump. And everyone's trying to divine, well, he meant this with what he was saying, or he meant that. Well, we found out that what he said about Iran was essentially what he'd always said about Iran, which is they can't have a bomb. We saw more of that Trump doctrine, which is hit him hard, hit him fast, hit him exactly like you warn him you're going to hit him, and do so in a way that gives off-ramps to conflict. It doesn't end in nation building or regime change, where their countries have the ability to back off and say, okay, I just got my hand slapped in the door, and I'm gonna pull it back now and put it on ice because this isn't working out for me. And the president of the United States saying, yeah, we're not going to come in and topple you now and have to rebuild this country. We're just going to deal with it. And it's something he did in his first term. It's something he's doing in his second term. And a lot of the neocons who'd come back out of the woolwork and were screaming, we need to topple this regime. We need to send in troops. We need to hit more targets. We need to kill the Ayatollah. They didn't get their way. But a major problem for the doves and the non-interventionists in the Republican Party was hyperbole and overreach. Some of the most intelligent and the most eloquent and the best spokesmen that the American right has for hold on, we need to stop this empire building, we need to recognize the actual prudential limits of American power and what it can accomplish, predicted World War III. They went too far in their predictions and were wrong. So while they weren't completely wrong, because President Trump didn't do what the neocons said, and that was good, and that they weren't completely right, and the neocons weren't completely right. There's only so many times you can predict World War III and then have anyone actually take you as a credible and serious force. So if something like this happens again, and I love them all to death, but some of my good friends come out there and say this is a disaster, this will lead to World War III, they're going to be more easily dismissed than they were during the Iran fight, when this was very public. And that's because of damage they've done to their own credibility that will take time to rebuild. So that fight's not over. The left-wing the Democrats' fight is over. Republicans, though, the hawks had a big victory.
Well, Donald Trump, he's like, I'm the parent right now. I'm going to make sure that I'm going to have all these kids go to their room. I'm going to make sure that everybody goes out there and calms down and gets everything just settled down a little bit. But Bedford, don't go anywhere. When we come back, the mandate is going to take on the district court judges next. Well, it's sad to see all the family farms shutting down because all the meat in the grocery store is coming from overseas. We know the quality is hit or miss. 85% of the so-called grass-fed beef that you see on the shelves is imported, and most people have no idea. So take a look at goodranchers.com, because it's not just about buying meat. It's about supporting American ranchers, getting top-tier quality and knowing where your food comes from. Good Ranchers sells only 100% born, raised, and harvested meat right here from local family farms in the U.S., and you'll be able to taste the difference. It's almost the 4th of July, so celebrate America's birthday with 100% American meat. If you subscribe today, you can get a free pick of meat for life. You can choose from Wagyu burgers, hot dogs, bacon, or wings in every box for the lifetime of your subscription. Plus, when you use my code Jill at checkout, you can get an extra $40 off. So visit goodranchers.com to shop American meat that you can trust. It's goodranchers.com, code Jill. Good Ranchers, American meat delivered. One of the worst things that's happened in Trump's second term is the rogue district court judges that acted like they're the president. So let's get into the Supreme Court ruling. Let's start with Donald Trump. He was talking about the significance of the latest Supreme Court ruling that is limiting those nationwide injunctions. Take a look.
It took the court system out of the presidency to a large extent. The courts were almost like being the president, and you can't have it. It was such a big decision. This is one of the biggest decisions where you would have a local federal judge who was radical left determining the policy for the whole nation, and now they can't do that.
Obviously, the Friday Supreme Court ruling was a huge deal, but does the left still have tricks up their sleeves when it comes to try and hinder Donald Trump's presidency? MP, let's start with you.
Yeah, there's 1,001 ways to slow things down. There's really an infinite amount of ways that they can throw, anything they can to, as we were saying earlier, slow down the time. They want to prevent action. They know the clock is more on their side if they can slow things down. So, first off, this is an incredible, victory for common sense in a variety of ways. We can talk a little bit about that, but this was a great moment where you actually had the court doing its job and not trying to grab power. It was so obvious that, I'm thankful, but it also is a kind of a gimme. Like this should not even be an issue. Nonetheless, they did their job. That's great. But are there going to be more things that we will see coming up through the courts? Yes. They're not going to stop in the courts. They're going to keep going in a variety of different ways. They're going to push this. That's what you do in legal warfare. So this isn't over in the courts at all. And then, of course, there's many other things that you're going to see happen in the coming months. So basically what you have here is you have a lot of smart people who are very upset. They went to their tried and true tactic, right? Which was preeminently like we're gonna have all these injunctions. We're gonna stop this administration from moving forward. That always works in the past. They've done the tried and true traffic with the protests that have started up. We haven't seen the end of them. But what I'm predicting is they're going to move to other things that you probably haven't thought of yet.
So
in the next year.
It's a victory for common sense, and it's actually a 6-3 decision that came down from the Supreme Court. But since 2025, since Donald Trump has taken office, again for the second time, 40 injunctions have taken place, Chris, since he has taken office. So thankfully, there is some common sense out there right now in the courts.
Weird reading of what an injunction is able to do that we've been witness to for the first Trump administration and now the beginning of the second, where a lawyer can represent all people, not just the plaintiff, not just the aggrieved, that they're able to say, you must do this for all people. That we saw it in the first administration where you had a judge in Hawaii who was deciding what federal immigration policy was, just a nationwide injunction. And that is thankfully over. Of course, there will be more tactics that are used, but that is a really essential one. And the courts will still be really important for different, to the left, for different aspects of their energy policy, for example. When you have more specific targets now, you'll be able to go at them continuously, whether it's President Trump saying, all right, we can drill here. Well, they can still sue over that and tie that up for years until a Democrat's back in office, and then the Democrat makes it protected lands, which is something very easy to do for an American president. And the next Republican president can't unprotect lands. That's part of the protected lands thing. It's very difficult to actually remove those protections, as Senator Mike Lee has just discovered. And when he stripped his aspect from the big, beautiful bill about opening up some of the federal lands to development, that landmine he stepped on for so many different things. There'll still be different paths. But one of my favorite things about this ruling was Ketanji Brown Jackson versus Amy Coney Barrett. Ketanji Brown Jackson, the judge who wrote the dissenting opinion for the Democrats, the one who wore a voodoo necklace to the State of the Union, just an interesting character all around, basically cited legal law that didn't exist. Tried to say that this is dictatorship, just sounded much more like a Democratic activist who hadn't actually done all of the necessary research or the readings. The way that the clerks wrote in the opinion was stupid. They would end things with ... wait for it ... like if they were tweeting or just using Zoomer humor, I suppose. And then you had Amy Coney Barrett who went right at her and said, you're citing legal opinions that don't make sense, that aren't real. You're not going anywhere off of jurisprudence and the previous laws have established. You're not going off of established American legal theories, and you're making stuff up. And by the way, I know that research is hard, sort of thing. It was a sign that and this is probably something that the end of the filibuster brought to the Supreme Court, which was started with Harry Reid and then finished by Mitch McConnell. You've got more open animus between judges in that courtroom that you didn't have previously. I mean, you saw it with the leaking of the Dobbs decision, and you see it in these decisions, which are significantly more funny and less threatening than that awful Dobbs case with that leak and the death threats that followed. But it's an entertaining read, and if you haven't caught up on it, log on to social media or pull up the opinions. They're fun.
Yeah, well, I've been looking at some of the numbers since this case came down. Since 1963, there have been 167 injunctions, and 62% of them have gone against Donald Trump, Matthew.
Yeah, this is shameless.
It's crazy.
Shameless. I mean, that's
a great stat.
It's a joke, and you can look at the stats, and they're very clear. You can look at the record, and you look at the arguments, and it's very clear. I mean, it is a shameless, outrageous attempt to thwart, our system, our sacred democracy, as they say, is under threat because of this. And we have to say, at least with ACB, like, then you go and totally redeem yourself. Yeah. We'd given up. But I don't know, totally redeemed, but that was very strong. And Chris, you were being very polite when you talked about Jackson's opinion and the Zoomers. I mean, this stuff was really dumb. I mean, it was embarrassing to the court. And I think that we're at the point where everyone else on the bench, probably almost all of them, realize this. And that's really a travesty.
Bedford, final word, 60 seconds here.
Oh my gosh. Well, I think there'll be more coming down from the Supreme Court. I'm happy to see these good decisions because just like Matt said, Amy Coney Barrett hasn't always been that strong. There's been a lot of feelings that seem to have entered some of these rulings. These things are less predictable with the conservative side and they are on the left wing side. But we know that with the left wing predictability, that we are still in for some more entertainingly stupid decisions or hopefully dissents.
Guaranteed. Write that down. Take it to the bank. Bedford, thanks so much. We'll see you again tomorrow.
See you then.
Don't go anywhere. Daniel Horowitz will be up next. We're going to get into immigration. This is Trump's big issue, but we'll take a look at it right after this. Hey guys, real quick before we jump back in, I've got something special to tell you about, and it's only happening this week. At BlazeTV, we're calling this 4th of July No King's Day because, let's be honest, this is what the 4th of July really is. It's not about just the fireworks and the cookouts. It's the day that we rejected the idea of the monarchy, the elites, and said that we'd be ruled by we the people. That's the spirit behind Independence Day. And we didn't just break up from England. We actually decided to build something better, a constitutional republic. We're grounded in liberty and individual rights and God-given freedom. There's no kings. It's just self-reliance and self-governance under the rule of law. So right now, for the first time ever, you can get a 7-day free trial of BlazeTV. So that means you'll have full access to every show, every documentary. It's going to be completely free for 1 week. It's your chance to come celebrate the true freedom with us and support honest media and decide for yourself what's worth watching. So if you've ever thought about joining BlazeTV, this is your moment. There's no risk, no kings, just truth. So celebrate No King's Day the way the founders would have wanted by choosing truth over tyranny. Start your 7-day free trial now at blazetv.com/BNT. That's blazetv.com/BNT. There's no promo code necessary. Just sign up for an account and start watching today and let freedom stream. Well, let's bring in Daniel Horowitz. He's the host of Conservative Review podcast, and he is so big on immigration. When we saw this, we knew we had to bring you in, Daniel. So thanks for joining us here tonight.
Great to be with you with good news.
Yeah, of course. There's good news all around. I don't know. Just keep watching this. President Trump actually caught up with Maria Bartiromo on Fox yesterday and elaborated on his approach to immigration enforcement for farm workers. Take a look.
Have you been backing away from this, though? Because recently you said, let's ease up on, taking in people that are working, hardworking, like in farms and hotels.
I don't back away. What I do I cherish our farmers. And when we go into a farm and we take away people that have been working there for 15 and 20 years who are good, who possibly came in incorrectly. And what we're going to do is we're going to do something for farmers where we can let the farmer sort of be in charge. The farmer knows he's not going to hire a murderer. But, when you go into a farm and he's had somebody working with him for 9 years doing this kind of work, which is hard work to do, and a lot of people aren't going to do it, and you end up destroying a farmer because you took all the people away, it's a problem. I'm on both sides of the thing. I'm the strongest immigration guy that there's ever been, but I'm also the strongest farmer guy that there's ever been. And that includes also hotels and, places where people work, a certain group of people work. So we're working on it right now. We're going to work it so that some kind of a temporary pass where people pay taxes, where the farmer can have a little control as opposed to you walk in and take everybody away.
Daniel, I'm not convinced that's good news, buddy. What happened? We've been told we were going to deport them all. What's this shift?
I'm trying to find some kernel of good news there, but this is a little bit tough. This really cuts to the core of the mandate. Couple things here before we talk about the problems, just to define what Trump is articulating. My concern is it's not even just farmers. If you take what he said about them not being murderers in conjunction with really a lot of statements, even from Tom Homan since the beginning of the administration, that this is about criminal aliens. Now, yeah, you're going to prioritize them. If you have a group of people in front of you that are more dangerous, that's a priority. But we've always said this is about sovereignty, continuity of the American experience, culture, tradition, demographics. And when you start making it about not being murderers, it's not just farmers. Clearly, you would have the same argument with construction, which is a big part of a lot of Republican donors are very concerned about that. So, you go through every industry, you just say, well, as long as they're working and they don't have any other crimes that we know about, then they're here to stay. I mean, and this has essentially been the position of both parties for many years, I guess, until Biden maybe extended it to even criminal aliens. But this is a big problem. The other thing is that when Trump mentioned farmers should have control, well, they should have control over their tractors and their tools. But here you're not talking about a tractor. Again, America is about the people. And when you bring them in, there's an element of the farm amnesty that's even more offensive than any other form of illegal immigration, because you're creating the problems we've seen demographically, and everyone's talking about in New York City, for example. And I have a column about this, where you have a number of rural counties now where the school system, remember, they have children, and they come in and they bring in more people, where some of these school districts are 30 to 50% immigrant families in places that until a generation ago had none of this. And you have cultural problems, you have drug trafficking problems. I've had sheriffs in rural counties tell me over the years, oh yeah, they work hard during the day and then they traffic drugs at night. They drive drunk on some of those rural roads at night. So I'm a little bit disappointed that you would think Trump himself would understand, before we even get into the labor arguments, that America is about a lot more than just a labor market.
Yeah, that was painful to watch. Be honest, that was really painful to watch. Not something I wanted to see. This appears to be coming from the Department of Agriculture, right?
Yep.
I mean, it seemed like it was a Secretary Rollins approved sort of message, and that's unfortunate too. She's great in many ways, and this, I get it, right? That there's the, like you said, it's the same argument, right? They've been making for a long time, but even if they said something at least like, look, we need to do a slow transition so we don't destroy an industry, right? Or something like that. That would at least be understandable, and then people could, argue about it. But am I wrong? I mean, is there more to the interview with Trump? Is there more to what I don't know actually if they've put out anything officially of what agriculture wants on this, but this just appears to be we just let them stay.
That's the problem. That is the logical conclusion. I have always wondered why you don't have the same deterrent in the interior that we do at the border. Clearly at the border, everyone knows if they come, they're going back, which is why they're not coming. I think the memo has gone out that if you're kind of working and you don't have an overt criminal record, we're not going after you. I think it's always been that way since January. It's just inevitably some got roped in, and then that created an outcry. Oh, you're getting non-criminal aliens. Well, then you're done. I mean, once you make that an entitlement, your sovereignty is done. Obviously, there's way too many criminal aliens. There's hundreds of thousands of them that we still need to get out. But like you're saying, I think this is a lot broader than just even farm workers. It's almost really saying that anyone who didn't commit another crime, we're not really going to go after them. And then you lose the whole issue. You lose the sovereignty of it. You lose the cultural aspect. And as far as the labor market, here's what's very important. It's disturbing when coupled with other statements he's made about H-1B. So it's like, all right, so, there's one thing if you only said this, but with the H-1B, what? So we won't do accounting, computers, tech, medical. I mean, it's basically everything, blue collar, white collar. And as we well know, a lot of this is a self-fulfilling prophecy because they drive down wages into the toilet labor-wise. And then I've had a lot of guests on the show. We talk about this, that it's a cultural gerrymander as well. When you have roofers where the entire, the entire group that's doing the roof that day have the salsa music blasting and only speak Spanish. Again, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. We're seeing it a little bit with the Indian workers in tech as well. It culturally gerrymanders Americans out of the market. The other thing I would say, and I have a piece coming out on this as well, I think it's also indefensible when tethered with another position of Trump, that he's very into preserving Medicaid expansion, doesn't really want to cut the welfare state, doesn't really want to cut spending. So what's happening is you're telling the American people that you're going to get free health care no matter what. The more we don't cut spending and have inflation, well, even if you kick out the illegals and raise the wages, honestly, it's not enough. So there's now this fiscal disincentive where you can never earn enough money in blue-collar work in this demonic level of inflation to make it work. So we have these 4 or 5 million adult males of working age that are not in the labor force. And what I would like to see from the administration, what I would have liked to see in budget reconciliation is a side-by-side bill to say, we're going to ease off welfare over time, but we're going to get rid of foreign labor. We're going to invite Americans back into the workforce. But right now, if you continue with the foreign labor, but then this whole welfare state and the spending that causes inflation that you can't hope to live normally on wages based off of blue collar work, then yeah, Trump and the left, they're kind of right, but it's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Daniel, let's go all the way back to candidate Trump. 2016, we knew he cared about tariffs forever. He had been on that for decades. But what really put him on the scene is he went to the right of everyone on immigration. Yep. So how are we seeing this version of him right now? What's changed? How have we gotten here with him?
No, and I think that's an important point. I've gone back to that a lot. A lot of people go back to this term with his promise on mass deportation, but I think it's important to talk about H-1B. You know, in Trump's first term, he actually was starting to make good reforms on that. And there were some limits and the numbers were starting to go down. Then obviously Biden got in, and I feel like that has not been revisited. I guess it's the tech money. I mean, look, everyone's going to get their pound of flesh. Trump did find a way to raise a lot of money. He's even raised a lot of money post-election. But I think what we need to understand is they're going to want their pound of flesh. And if the base doesn't speak up, they're going to get their ROI on it. And obviously, they want this. I also think Trump often doesn't understand the mutual exclusivity of certain propositions. And in his mind, he's like, yeah, I want to put the American worker first. But then he hears these arguments that on the surface sound correct. But if you punch through it, like I said, with the culture, the wages, the welfare, I think you could develop a better plan. But that's where you need an intellectual movement that hands Trump a sustainable message, a sustainable plan that helps him implement, but also pressures him into doing it. I'll also tell you this, Jill and Matt, I mean, boy, if we had a movement that we had a couple weeks ago on, you better not be dragged into a war with Israel, and a lot of them are still ticked off about the bombing of Iran that worked out really well, got rid of their nuclear program for years, a major ROI on that. I wish we could replicate that degree of pressure and put it here.
Well, so let's hold that hope, because I actually think that this is a classic as Trump works his way through issues, right? He clearly had some people that he knows in the administration say, we got to do this, we got to do something here. And I could see this working out with the pressure and the usual back and forth to the point where they find another solution that doesn't involve, because let's be real, there's no way in hell that Stephen Miller is okay with this.
No.
There's no way that's not possible. And similarly with many other people. Now, there might be an argument to say you don't want to all of a sudden put all these businesses under. And so we have to have some rational process. But, so I think that the pressure will be on this one. This is not something that people are going to be afraid to talk about. And they're going to say, with all due respect, this isn't the right way to go about it. So I have some hope that will happen in the same way you had that tension with Iran and Israel, where, both sides didn't quite get they want, but what happened was the result is seemingly very, very good. 60 seconds left. Do you think this is possible with immigration here?
I absolutely think that's possible, and I think it's an imperative. Look, there was inflation and invasion. Those were the two big mandates. Let's face it, nobody's cutting spending. I mean, it's just not happening, not in a real way. So I think that leaves us with the immigration thing. That will be his legacy. And the bottom line is you cannot respond to 10 million illegals, and then you're going to be on the flip side of this with the next Democrat president, with having a Republican that just says, let's get out the criminal aliens. That's a losing proposition. But again, we got to keep the focus, keep up the pressure. And I think it's got to be in totality about fulfilling the 2016 mandate of putting the American culture, but also the American worker first. And this is the blue collar jobs as well as the white collar jobs. Students as well, the Chinese student stuff that also needs a little bit of babysitting as well. Eternal vigilance, hope and trust, but we got to verify.
What did we vote against? Inflation and invasion. Daniel Horowitz. I love that line. Thanks so much for joining us.
See you next time.
Don't go anywhere. We'll have your replies coming up on what you think that we should be doing with DHS right after this. Just when you thought the Trump administration couldn't get any more awesome, they found a way to raise the bar. DHS posted this meme previewing Alligator Alcatraz. MP, I have to look at this and I just have to say, is this what you voted for?
This is absolutely what I voted for. I would have voted for this 2 or 3 times if I had the chance.
I love that people also are like getting upset on X about anything that the administration puts out there. You can't be doing that. You know what? They can, and that's why I posted on X today. Alligator Alcatraz. How would you enhance maximum security prisons? What additions would make the biggest impact? So let's go ahead and get right to the replies. Intellect Vault says sharks with lasers attached to their heads. Of course, we're all thinking of Austin Powers. We're all thinking of Dr. Evil. We know, like, this has to be the origin of this, right, MP? It has to be.
Oh, yeah, this is, by the way, we actually cite that show to each other way too much, that movie. So that was going to get you a win when you put that in there.
Very in line with what we do here on the breaks and before and after the show. We love that movie. Corey Mills is a fraud, replies minefield and automated miniguns on the perimeter. Now he's taking this seriously. I like it, right? He's going, this is what's going to work. If you need to level up, this is how you're going to do it.
Yeah, he's just, let's make it look like a prison camp because that's what it is. I get that. He's going serious. Corey Mills is a fraud, is just telling it like it is.
As he does. Let's go ahead and round out the replies with Jim, who says, surround the prison with angry ex-wives. They'll volunteer to go back inside. That is one of the funnier replies, I think, that we have ever had at this part of the show.
Funny, but also terrifying. Yeah.
That's
it had a lot of bite to it.
It does. It has a lot of bite to it. Unlike Donald Trump that we were talking about earlier with Daniel Horowitz, right? Let's go back to the deport them all conversation in the time that we have left, because it's so strange to see, okay, right, we're talking about the mandate. This is it. We know that immigration is the top issue for so many people. We've talked about on the show before. I said, hey, listen, in the hotels, we can just keep a basket out on every floor. We can figure out a way to put our own towels into that basket. If this is what we need to do, we can all make sacrifices in the short term. But MP, it's just so strange to hear Donald Trump go, well, the farmers, they're not going to hire the murderers. They know who they need.
So it wasn't good, but it is one of these moments where I think that he'll work through it, because he's realizing what has been presented to him is no doubt Brooke Rollins saying, or ag people saying, this affects a lot of these industries, and these industries are generally supportive of you. But the right answer to that is, let's figure out over time with metrics how to transition these industries away from hiring illegals. Bottom line, and it's a complicated problem because Medicaid, came up earlier. we're subsidizing people to get fat and obese, and then healthcare harvests money off them, and the whole system is disgusting. But we're also paying a lot of people who are able-bodied to stay home. Well, we gotta get off that, right? We need our own people to be healthy and to be working. And so the first step is you have to transition the illegals out, and then you have to transfer a bunch of Americans in. And it's true that that's not going to be an easy process, right? This is a difficult problem, but we have to come up with an actual solution here. And I do think with this one, there are so many people in the administration and outside the administration who are going to think just like we do. This is not the end of this deal, because if the policy really is to just let alone those industries, that defeats the entire point, as you said. So I don't think this is going to fly, and I think the president is just working through this issue.
Yeah, it feels like somebody's in his ear, and we just need to go ahead and shift that person over to the side.
They should be deported, actually.
They should be deported. Absolutely. I'll give you credit for that one. I look at the Trump administration, and it feels like we had the shock and awe of executive orders. We had all the best of the best to start out with this administration, and it's almost hurting them right now. To your point, we do need a plan. Once there's a plan laid out, I feel like everybody will give you that time and space that is needed to actually execute and deport them all. But right now, we're just kind of in this gray zone where it's like, we used to have all these fun headlines. Now what do? We need that red meat a little bit. Just give us something, a little extra right now.
I will give you something, and I'll give our audience something. I mean, this entire last 3 days of weekend, I guess it was. I mean, I've talked to a lot of people about a lot of different issues within the administration, and good people getting together to try to solve problems. And, things are just getting interesting. So, and we're going to be bringing a lot of that to you. So there's all kinds of internal battles. Some of them are healthy, some of them aren't. But everyone who's committed to seeing the mandate be implemented, now is the time to really bunker down, and for the media like us, who is not a bunch of psychopaths like at CNN, to start to shine a spotlight on what's going on, so we ensure that this mandate is implemented. Because you have a lot of things going on right now that people don't even know about. I mean, Doge has basically been dismantled. Why? That's one of the most popular things we had. That's not a good idea, right? So there's a lot of stuff like that we just got to get the word out there and unite the good people on and move forward.
You were able to spend the weekend with a lot of your Claremont people, and unlike Chris Bedford, your plane arrived on time today. We are very thankful for that.
Yeah, I got up, I took a 4-hour nap this morning, and made it here right on time. 2 minutes to spare before makeup time, so I was here early. Really, I don't know what the problem is.
4-hour nap. I don't know how you do it sometimes, but you do, and we appreciate it. So thank you. And thanks for the flights actually being on time. You never know.
No, you don't.
Bedford.
You don't. I was flying a little close to the sun with that. I didn't have any wiggle room. But
as Chris Bedford proved, sometimes it takes 24 hours to get home. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you back here tomorrow.